Hi, I'm Jessica Grant, pediatrician at Manhattan Valley Pediatrics, a medical office on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and your host for Now What, the podcast aimed at tackling all things about parenting. As those of you who have tuned in before know, I hope by having guests in different areas involving parenthood come in and talk to us to support decisions that make parenting easier for you on an everyday basis because we all know how hard it is. To that end, today I have Ashley Now on. She is the mom of four. Yes, you heard that right, four, and a pre and postnatal corrective exercise specialist. And I'm super excited to hear what she says about keeping healthy. She's also the woman behind Get Mom Strong, which we're going to tell you all about today. So, Ashley, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Excellent. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Get Mom Strong and how you got started on this path?
Absolutely. So I had a singleton and I was kind of the quintessential bounce back story, right? Felt as good as ever just a few weeks after birth and, went about my business. And I just assumed it would be the same thing for my second pregnancy. My second pregnancy was twins, however, and I had 7 and 6 pound twins, so full term twin boys. And I had been an athlete my whole life. And I just assumed that if I worked harder and kept exercising, that my stomach would look better. And I would feel better and the back pain would go away. And so I went about my normal high intensity exercises and, ended up discovering that I had really bad diastasis recti. That is a separation of the abdominal muscles. It's a thinning of that connective tissue that goes between those muscles. And it can leave you with a pooch, if you're getting asked like, oh, when are you due? And you're very much not pregnant. It could be that you have diastasis recti. And I had a very, very bad case of it. I discovered pelvic floor physical therapy and it changed my whole life. And after I got done with pelvic floor PT, I actually said to the physical therapist, I said, I can't just let this sit. Like, why are we not telling every woman how to heal her core and pelvic floor? So many of us have kids and, we go to that 6-week checkup and we're just told, hey, you want some birth control? Yes, you can go back to having sex. Sure, exercise. We're not given any information how to heal our bodies, how to feel good again. And I'm not talking about bouncing back and looking good in a bikini. I'm talking about feeling good and having foundational strength. So that sent me on a mission to help women everywhere. So I went back to school, became a pre and postnatal corrective exercise specialist, and I have now dedicated my life to helping women feel much better postpartum and to be really proactive during pregnancy as well.
It's amazing. I remember I had C-sections with both of my girls. And I remember the first time I got out of the shower, I leaned back to squeegee out my hair and almost ended up in the tub because there was no musculature to correct that. And no one warns you. No one says those muscles aren't going to be there. We've cut through them all, which I guess maybe I should have known, but I didn't.
How would you know?
I was like, wait, there's nothing to counterbalance my backward fall except for me grabbing the glass door and hoping it, supports me.
Yeah.
So you really don't hear much about it from anyone.
You really don't.
Were you into fitness before this? Have you always been kind of a person who is dedicated to keeping healthy?
Yeah, so I was a competitive CrossFit athlete before I got pregnant with the twins. So very into fitness. And I now realize, how that level of training probably didn't help matters, especially postpartum, because I just thought I could go back to doing that kind of thing. But yes, always into fitness. However, it was not my profession, right? So definitely a change of heart and careers. I was a grant writer before for a long time. So a big change of careers, just because, like I said, I couldn't believe nobody was teaching this to women.
And you had another one after your twins, if I'm adding correctly.
Yes, you are adding correctly. He was adopted, though. I did not birth him.
You didn't go through.
I adopted a fourth baby boy.
Okay, yeah. So you did not do it. I was wondering if your training that you learned then helped you on the next pregnancy, but you didn't. Unless you're going to have another, we won't have the answer to that question.
I will not have the answer to that, but undoubtedly it will. And I've helped thousands of women who have had an issue with a first or second pregnancy and have had a subsequent pregnancy, and the outcome has been night and day. Night and day.
So maybe we'll start there then. How can you what can you do? How much import is there to be prepared for the delivery, to kind of do something before you get pregnant or to do something while you're pregnant and prep for the delivery to make your recovery easier? Should we be thinking about this on the front end?
Absolutely. So I have a full pregnancy program dedicated to just this because you can be really proactive. You can absolutely train your core while pregnant. Now, when you hear core training, probably the first thing that comes to mind is sit-ups and crunches. And that's actually not what we want to do at all while pregnant. That can create a lot of pressure out against that connective tissue that runs between your six-pack muscles. And we want to try to avoid that and minimize that pressure. And we do that by training our deep core. So underneath your six-pack abs that everybody thinks about when they think about abs, you have this giant muscle called the transverse abdominals. And they actually run like shoelaces. So if you look down at your shoelaces, that's what those muscles look like inside, like a corset. And so we can keep those muscles tight and healthy and strong. And that's going to help you reduce aches and pains during pregnancy. It's going to help take pressure off that, again, connective tissue that's stretching to make room for baby. So learning to use your deep core system while pregnant is a game changer for both your pregnancy comfort as well as your postpartum recovery.
Okay. And so maybe then I will go through some of the stuff you do post delivery. So can you want to talk a little bit about pelvic floor muscles and why they matter and
Yeah.
how they contribute to our life in lots of unknown little ways?
Yeah, so I like to think about the pelvic floor actually like a base. Your pelvic floor is a bowl of muscles that sit, right into your pelvis. And so that acts very much like a base and support. It also connects to your core muscles. And so we really want these muscles to be strong, but also to be able to relax, right? All we ever were taught as girls, I don't know about you, but like Cosmo magazine was to do Kegels, right? Kegels will solve everything. More Kegels, more Kegels. Oftentimes, Kegels can actually exacerbate issues postpartum. So you really want to train your pelvic floor through its full range of motion. I like to think about it like your bicep muscle. If you were to walk around just squeezing and flexing your bicep muscle all day, it's going to get really tired. And then if you were to sneeze, that muscle would give out. It can't hold. The same thing goes for your pelvic floor. If you've got a really tight pelvic floor and you're just holding and gripping and, looking for core stability by gripping that pelvic floor tight, it gets really tired and it will give out. So I like to train women to use their pelvic floor to both lengthen and relax it and then to contract it. So same thing as doing a bicep curl. You would lengthen first and then you would contract and flex that muscle. So really important to understand this concept, especially postpartum. Our body likes to compensate for the lack of core strength. I was just talking to Dr. Grant before this, and I was saying, it's the only event that we have in life where you deliver a baby and either through a major abdominal surgery or vaginally, and your body's just undergone this huge event and you have no core support. So we've got to get that core support back. The most important thing we can do is focus on our breathing. I call it core breathing or deep breathing. And a lot of women spend a lot of our years sucking in, holding our breath. If I were to tell you at home right now to inhale, most of you are going to do this. Up into your shoulders, right? And what that does is it's cutting off our pelvic floor connection. So I always coach you. The first thing I teach you to do, and it seems like, why are we wasting our time with this? But it is literally the foundation for healing, is I teach you how to breathe properly. So you're going to want to inhale and breathe down into your rib cage. You should feel that overflow go into your belly and relax. That's going to relax your pelvic floor. So we start with the real basics.
You would be a good scuba instructor, because when I took scuba diving, they told me women go through their tanks faster because they do these like up here breaths and they don't breathe those deep, slower breaths. And so I think this is like, some of it's just the way it is, but we can try to correct for it, right? It's just the way our bodies are, but we can begin to correct. So you start with breathing, and then you said you don't really recommend sit-ups and crunches as the main thing to do. What's like one exercise people can do to work on their core, like starting tonight?
Yeah, not only is it not the main thing to do, but you can actually cause a lot more harm than good by doing sit-ups and crunches early postpartum. You can eventually get yourself back to the point where you can do them, but it's a very high pressure movement.
Okay.
The most important thing you can do is that core breathing. So you'd inhale, and then when you exhale, you'd lift your pelvic floor, yes, like a Kegel. So you'd inhale, relax pelvic floor, exhale, lift, and draw your belly button in and up. So inhale, exhale, draw that tummy in and up like you're imagining your belly button going in toward the spine and up towards your heart.
Okay.
And if you can do that and hold for about a 5 count, that's a great place to start. And what this is doing is it's strengthening that deep corset abs.
Okay.
So this is going to be what actually helps get your waistline back. Not that that's our focus, but a lot of women are like, I don't look the same. So it can help get that waistline back, but it also is the muscle that's going to help reduce back pain, reduce hip pain. So if I could only send women home with one exercise, do it before you get in the shower. Do it while you're nursing your baby. I mean, you can literally do this exercise anywhere and it will change your whole life. I call it our hidden superpower, and it really is that powerful of a tool.
Amazing. And my therapist also believes in deep breathing, so it might all connect somehow.
100%. The anxiety, when you suck in and hold your breath, and we suck in all day, you're breathing up here. That's your fight or flight, right? Your body thinks it's running from a tiger. It's like, we're not relaxed. So 100%, it can cause headaches, anxiety, constipation, back pain, pelvic floor tightness, leaking. Like, that's why I'm saying, if I can only give one exercise, I'm like, breathing, activating.
Okay. So you mentioned leaking. Why, oh, why must we leak? Is there anything you can do to help with post? Maybe it has never happened to me, if you want to believe that, but the laughing or the coughing after delivery where you feel like you have to oh gosh, do I have to run to the bathroom? Was there any way to help with that?
Yeah. So some of it, when you are very newly postpartum, you need to know a lot of it's going to heal itself to some degree, but you can so don't freak out. Like if you are just a few weeks postpartum and you're listening to this, I don't want you to think like, oh no, this is my life. It does get better on its own, but you can also be really proactive. I always recommend women see a pelvic floor physical therapist if they can. But leaking tends to happen postpartum for one of two reasons. So either you have a weak pelvic floor, and that can be really common post-delivery, but it can also be that you have an overly tight pelvic floor, a hypertonic pelvic floor. And the way you can kind of tell the difference is that if you have a hypertonic tight pelvic floor, you might have those headaches, that anxiety, you might have that constipation, that constantly tight hip that just won't give. You might feel like when you put a tampon in that it doesn't stay well, or when you have sex, it's uncomfortable. Those are all signs of a hypertonic or overly tight pelvic floor. So if you have a tight pelvic floor, we have to focus on releasing and relaxing that pelvic floor. Remember how I just talked about the bicep? If we're flexing it all day and you go to put a weight in this hand, your bicep's going to give out because it's tired. So that's the sneeze, that's the cough, that's the running, is like this tight muscle says, oh, okay, you overloaded me, I'm done. And that's the leak. So if we can get that muscle to let go and relax, and if we can stop sucking in all day and breathe deeply, we're going to get that muscle to relax. And so then when we need it to flex, when we sneeze or cough or run, it can do its job. So that's the key with a tight pelvic floor. For a weak pelvic floor, we want to treat it similarly, but we want to focus a little bit more on that activation. It can be really hard to get that mind-muscle connection back, especially early postpartum. You're like, what pelvic floor muscles? Where? So just working slowly on that connecting, as I described, when you exhale, to lift that pelvic floor up, and you might not be able to lift it much, but working on that inhale, we relax pelvic floor, exhale, we lift pelvic floor. So learning to take your pelvic floor through that whole range of motion can be really helpful. So those are kind of the two different paths that can cause leaks and the ways we can help improve it. And it absolutely can get better no matter how far postpartum you are.
Okay. And is the reason that I want to see if I understood, is the reason that you leak if you're tight after you deliver because you're tight partially to make up for weaker core? Or is it all kind of connected? Is that what we're saying?
Exactly. So a lot of times postpartum, because our core strength is so weak, we'll grip our butt real tight. clinch, kind of that booty clinch, especially if you're like doing dishes or you've been standing all day. So you're constantly gripping, holding. It can also be like fear, trauma. If you've had a delivery that was less than pleasant, if you've got a prolapse, you might be guarding that part of your body. And of course, like history of sexual trauma, things like that can definitely contribute to a tight pelvic floor. And then again, just sucking in. When you suck in, because you want to look thinner and you want to fit in those jeans and you're wearing overly tight clothes and you can't breathe down into your body, your pelvic floor works with your diaphragm. It's like a piston on a train. So when you inhale, how you're supposed to inhale down into your body, it pushes air down into your lungs and helps your pelvic floor relax. And so if we're cutting off that system and every breath that you're taking is going up into your shoulders instead of down to help relax your pelvic floor, then yeah, your pelvic floor is going to get a little angry.
I feel like you've been watching me in my home, walking around like this. It's like you're a fly on the wall. I may need to work on some of this. So can you talk a little bit about sex post a vaginal delivery and, why they make you wait if you have any knowledge, and then, anything you can do to improve the experience post a delivery? I think there's a lot of fear out there about like getting back into it, not just because you might not want to get pregnant again yet, but because of fear of how it will be.
Yeah, and this certainly is not my specialty area. There are women who are much better versed to speak to this, but I will say this, 6 weeks, you might not be ready.
Mhm.
That's okay. That's okay. I know we feel this pressure to please. Nursing has a huge impact on your pelvic floor and your vaginal tissues. So you might experience a lot of dryness. It's very akin to being deeply in menopause. Your body is not producing the same hormones during this postpartum time. So using a lubricant can definitely help. Taking things slowly, doing what you're comfortable with, focusing on some pelvic floor relaxation before you have sex can also help. So that deep breathing, right? Taking some time to maybe go into child's pose and just focus on breathing and letting go can really help. Because again, if those muscles get really tight and they don't want to let something in, they're not going to let something in. So there's definitely ways to help. And if you have pelvic floor pain with sex, I 10 out of 10 recommend seeing a pelvic floor physical therapist in person. They're going to help you take the steps to really get over that. They're not just going to tell you to have a glass of wine. They're going to help you.
Can you talk a little bit about hip pain? So, I have had a lot of hip pain. So this is on a very selfish level, carrying around my younger one. It's been better now because she's a little bit older, but I remember being on a family vacation and she was attached to my hip the whole time. And we came back and I was like, I don't know if I can walk. My hip is killing me. Anything we can do to kind of prevent that?
So I know you're a C-section mom from our conversation before. I also am a C-section mom, and I also have dealt with hip pain, and it is not a coincidence. So I'm going to address this from the C-section side first. When you've had a C-section, it's a very common surgery, yes, but it is still a major abdominal surgery. What happens when you have that surgery is that they're cutting through many layers. Your body creates scar tissue. I like to say it's like little spider webs that are just looking to seal up that scar, but those spider webs don't always go in the right place. Sometimes those little sticky spider webs will stick on different areas of the body that isn't directly where that scar is. So if you didn't do scar mobilization and scar massage, because nobody tells us to do it, I didn't know either, we can have some of those sticky spider webs sticking to areas that might be pulling on that hip or might be causing back pain. Even shoulder pain can sometimes be linked to C-section. If you think about a shirt that's tucked in really tightly, that's your scar, right? Imagine your scar like that, pulling and it's tight. You go to lift your arm up and that shirt pulls. You can feel that pulling, right? Our C-section scar is doing the same thing if it doesn't have mobility and if it can't move. So a lot of times our hip pain is actually related to that. So doing some scar massage can make a big difference. Yes, it's better to do it when you're more early postpartum, but it's also not too late. Working on some mobility is great, but we often think that the solution to hip pain is stretching. Oftentimes it's strengthening. I don't know about you, but after I had my abdominal muscles completely sliced through, I remember the first time I went to jump. Let's just say I didn't get very high. Those hip flexors and those hip muscles and those stabilizers, they don't even know what's going on. They don't know where they're at in space. There's no core strength to help you with that movement. And so your body is trying to compensate all the time. Our bodies are master compensators. They're very smart. So working on hip flexor strength versus just stretching the heck out of them all the time can make such a difference. And you will probably find, if you're a postpartum mom, especially a C-section mom, that your hip flexors are very weak.
Interesting. So if we can dial back a few years and you can tell my prior version of me, that would be so helpful. Can you talk a little bit about back pain? We see a lot in the pediatric office of people coming in with back pain from bending over and picking their kids up in the crib. I had a mom who had surgery and couldn't pick her kid up and they had to set up it was crazy, the system they had to set up to get their child out of the crib. So any way to prevent ending up in that position?
Yeah, absolutely. So that transverse abdominals, those deep core muscles that I'm talking about, they actually run from top to bottom and all the way around. They literally look like a corset inside your body, a natural corset. Don't use a real corset. Those are trash and will ruin your pelvic floor, but they're the body's natural corset system. And this, when we can fire this muscle and when we learn how to use our breath, so exhaling when you pick something up. If you learn nothing else today, take this tip with you. Exhale when you lift. What that does is it helps to fire those core muscles, which is going to help protect your back. It also helps to manage pressure on the pelvic floor, so you're not pushing down on the pelvic floor. So one of the most protective things we can do for our back and for our pelvic floor is when we're going to lift a kid, exhale. The other tip I like to give moms a lot is I made like a silly little dance to it to help moms remember it, but I call it tripod it. And what I mean by that is, as much as you can, have 3 points of contact with the earth. So if you are going to bend over to pick something up, go into the lunge position, but then take your hand and place it on something so that you've got a little bit more support. Whenever you can, you want to think about staggering your stance, having a wide base, and again, exhaling when we lift. So if you're talking about that mom trying to get her kid out of the crib, I would get really close to the crib, get my hip bones right on there so that I have a little bit more support. That one you can't tripod it because you have to use your hands to pick up the kid, but grab the kid, hinge at the hips. So instead of rounding at the shoulders, you're going to hinge at the waist, grab the kid, big exhale, pick them up. That's going to help a lot. You can use a step stool if you're short like me. A lot of times we're trying to awkwardly get in position to get a kid out of the crib. Using a little step stool to help give you a little height can make a big difference.
Amazing. I love how all the muscles connect. You think I would know this from anatomy, but it's a long time ago and most people don't have that even. And I even forget how all of this is connected. So it's a great reminder of kind of how amazing the body is, but also how we have to treat it a little bit better if we want it to work well. How do you fit all your exercise into your life with, 4 kids at home?
It's hard. The best thing I think for me is having a plan. If you're fumbling around trying to figure out like which YouTube video to watch or what you should do that day, you're just wasting time. I'm also a big believer in a home fitness program. Of course, my app is Home Fitness, but it is for a reason. As moms, we're busy. We don't really have time to drive to the gym. You just want to be able to work out in your pajamas, grab a set of dumbbells, do something for 15, 20, 30, however many minutes you've got. So that's my biggest tip, is to make sure that you just have a plan, that it's very easily accessible, and that you don't have a lot of fuss around it. We just don't have time for the frill.
Do you ever incorporate any of your kids into your workout? Is there a way to do that? Can kids do it with you? Can you use them as your weight? Is there anything you can do with them?
All of the above. So you can absolutely use your kid as a weight. And I also tell moms during their workout time, you're filling your cup. So don't feel selfish. If you need to put on Miss Rachel for 20 minutes so that you can get a workout in without somebody sitting on you, put on Miss Rachel. It's okay. You filled your cup. And there's something to be said for that as a mom. We have so much guilt, I think, especially with social media, seeing all of these women, these seemingly perfect lives, and their kids are definitely going to Harvard. No, it's okay. Put on Miss Rachel.
And do you need to have a lot of equipment in the house? Is there like a top 3 things you recommend you have? I mean, other than, like you said, some videos, some like setup of what you're gonna do, but I mean equipment to buy. Is there anything you have to?
I recommend for my program, and I think they're just so effective. You can do a lot with very little dumbbells, at least
Mhm,
one set, uh, and then resistance bands.
mhm,
If you have dumbbells and resistance bands, you're going to be in great shape.
great. And any advice to a mom like me who has never worked out and finds just the idea, my husband's like, "Let's go running." And I'm like, I wouldn't make it to the corner with you. It's like so intimidating to start. Like, how do
Yeah.
you get started?
Yeah. So you start with baby steps. I think in our society, especially as New Year's approaches, everybody thinks, oh, just this all or nothing mentality. Like, if I don't go work out an hour and start this green juice diet, I'm never going to reach my goals. But it's actually the opposite. Starting small is what wins the long game. Start with 10 minutes. Tell yourself 10 minutes. If you feel great after those 10 minutes and want to keep going, fantastic. If you feel like garbage and the 10 minutes was plenty for you, then be done. Starting is always the hardest part. So I love that 10-minute rule for my moms because it gets us to put the tennis shoes on, to grab our dumbbell. Just start with the little tiny baby step. And then eventually, believe it or not, even women who have not historically exercised come back to me and they're like, oh, you're right about the endorphins. It gives us some real endorphins. And so then eventually you crave it, but it takes a minute to get there.
And any motivating tips just in general for those days where you're like, "I just don't wanna do it today." How do you stay, I mean, it sounds like, I assume you work out the vast majority of days of your week. How do you stay motivated to do it day in and day out?
Yeah, I do 3-day on, 1-day rest. I do believe in rest days. Your body needs it. But on the days where I really don't feel like it, I remember how I feel when I'm done,
Mhm.
right? That's the motivation. How are you going to feel when you're done the next day? And just knowing that you checked that off the list and did something for yourself. And as I mentioned, starting is always the hardest part. So when you don't feel like it, again, I use that 10-minute rule. And then if I don't feel good after 10 minutes and I really didn't want to do that workout, I quit. And that's okay. You can quit. I want
Any
moms to know that that's okay too.
Okay. Any thoughts on, something very near and dear to me is postpartum anxiety and depression, partially for what I do as a pediatrician, partially for my own personal experience with, having my children. Any thoughts on the protective value of doing a program like yours in terms of the postpartum symptoms that we see?
Yeah, I mean, don't quote me exactly on this study, but I think it's something like it can reduce it by over 50% if you exercise for merely 10 to 15 minutes a day. Um, because we're getting those endorphins, because we're filling our cup. And I also want to mention that it doesn't have to be necessarily weightlifting. You can go out for a walk. Like if you're thinking, I can't manage this with a baby, get outside for 10 or 15 minutes, walk around the block. That's enough to make a difference. It's just light or moderate activity that can impact that postpartum depression or anxiety. So do that. I think as moms, we don't fill our cups and we have a lot of mom guilt when we try to take that time. But I'm telling you that it will make you feel better, move better. We want our bodies to function well. There's something to be said for that in terms of postpartum anxiety and depression. When your body is not working how you're accustomed to having it work and you don't feel good, it is awfully hard to get up and be a jovial, happy mom, not to mention you're not sleeping. I don't know. I have a 1 year old, almost 1 year old, and he still sleeps like trash. And there are some days where I just feel like I'm losing my mind. And so I
I have a
see you.
5-year-old who sleeps like trash, so
Yeah.
I get it. I get it, but I'm always fascinated, by the fact that moms put themselves last, and this is a much more philosophical thought, but, moms put themselves last always, and people come into my office all the time and say, "Dr. Ant, how do you feel about us having visitors with a new baby?" And my answer is, "Well, let's talk about the medical exposures for your child in terms of the winter viruses." Fine, that's what you're really asking me, I understand. But I'm also gonna tack on to the end of that, you need to function. And if you're going to have 10 visitors over that you're entertaining, you are not going to function by the end of the day. It's okay to tell people no. This like fact that like we can't say no, we have to have people over and then we have to cook for them once they're coming over and we have to like stay awake and not let go to, I think it's so much pressure for us. And so, do you hear from moms who do your program that it helps recalibrate that as well?
100%. I think it motivates them in a few ways. One, they are filling up their cup, right? And at first, it can be hard for a mom to do, but they always inevitably say, I can't believe how much better I feel. I'm so glad. And then what comes next, right after that, it gives me goosebumps, is they often will send me videos of their kids watching them work out. And they're cheering for them. They're saying, go, mommy, go, And they're like, look what I'm showing my daughter. I'm showing my daughter that she can take time for herself. And so you're breaking that cycle of people pleasing that I think we have on us as women. And you're showing your girl, because like my program is very much not about like shrinking or being small. It is about getting as strong and as healthy as you can get. We're also showing women like, guess what? We don't have to fit in a bikini. We can just be strong and healthy and like be powerful in these bodies. And so what a message to give our girls as they go into the next generation. It's a very powerful thing.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it that way, but my daughter's 7 and she's already come home and said, "How much calories are in this?" And I'm like, "No, no. We don't do calories. We do strength, we do strong foods to make your muscles big, to do your swimming." But it's crazy how early that message gets indoctrinated. And I think what you're saying is so the pushing back against that from an early age. And that's really powerful, I think, for our kids to hear, particularly our girls to hear.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah.
How do you balance the business with being a mom? Because it's not just working out, you're running an entire business, right? How are you balancing that? How is that going?
I don't.
Mhm.
Am I allowed to give that answer? I
Yep.
don't. I feel like a chicken with my head cut off
Yep.
most days. I do have help, in fairness. My husband helps a lot.
Mhm.
He also helps with the business some. And so I do have help, I think, more than a lot of women have. I didn't during COVID. He was still working full time during COVID. And let me tell you, it was some of the hardest times I've ever experienced. So if you were in the thick of it trying to juggle things, the one tip that I think saved me, and somebody had shared this with me, is like, we're always juggling many balls. Our jobs as busy moms and business owners and whatever, whatever you're taking on in life, is to decide which of those balls is rubber and can bounce and which ones are glass. And if we drop them, they will break. And so I was always thinking of that. And I still am to this day as I juggle everything, like, what can't break today? And know that the rubber balls, if they fall, they're going to bounce back and you'll get to them later. And that's got to be okay.
I love that analogy. I think about, there was a book that said, one child was getting all of the attention and why could that kid get all the attention? And the mom said, the one who needs attention gets it when they need it. The attention will be there for the other one when they need it. And I try to think of my business like that. When the business needs the attention, it gets a little more. And when the kid is sick, the business gets a little less, but it is so hard. So I like the ball analogy. You're just trying to keep everything intact.
Yeah. And I just want to acknowledge that for women, like, we do have this pressure where we think we have to do it all and we have to do it all perfectly. And we don't. And I'm saying this to myself because I am probably the worst person about feeling that way, that I have to achieve and do and keep moving and keep going. And, we're also human. And so take care of yourself too.
It's hard though. I think it's hard too because this has nothing to do with actually what we came to talk about, but we bear so much of the mental load of the organization. I don't know, your husband helps. Maybe he helps with the mental load. I find that. Right, exactly. So my husband does a ton. I don't want to criticize him as a husband about this. He does a ton, but there's none of the mental load. If I don't tell him, go to this, pick up this child, go to this, pick up this,
Right.
he'll come home with a different child. It's like,
Have you seen the recent, TikToks or Instagram reels about making a list? It's become like this huge joke with women. They're like the husband's like, make a list. And the woman's like, I don't want to make a list.
I mean, now we have like a calendar that we put everything in, but then he doesn't look at the calendar, so it doesn't help. And I just feel like we do so much of that juggling that is
And
under.
we do because of women. I think we're primally wired. I think there's something to be said for that. I think we're
Yeah.
primally wired to kind of default
Mhm.
parent a little bit more. And, we obviously get help and ask for help, and that's great. But a lot of women out there don't even have spouses.
Right.
There's a ton of single moms out there. So I don't even want to complain because I know, like, we're doing the balancing act, and there's women with partner's deployed. And yeah, so it's,
No, you're totally right. So can you talk, we kind of mentioned the app. And so, I obviously you have the Instagram account that we can kind of check in on, but can you talk a little bit about the app and how Strong Like a Mother, works? Like you sign up for it and tell us a little bit about it.
yeah. So I always offer a free trial. So you get a 7-day free trial. So you can pop in there. I make every woman, once they download the app, and you can sign up at getmomstrong.com if you're interested. And then you'll be prompted to download the app. Once you download the app, I take you through core basics. And that's that boring breathing stuff I was just talking about. So I always try and set up expectations. I'm like, hey, you got to do this boring stuff for a little bit before we get into the fun stuff. But once you get through the boring core stuff, you go into one of the Strong Like a Mother, people nickname it slam programs. And these are total body fitness programs. So you're going to sweat, you're going to get stronger, you're going to get those endorphins that you've missed. And I'm very much a big believer in taking a total body approach to healing the core and pelvic floor, because in real life, guess what? We're picking up kids. They're heavy. So if I just train you how to do the rehab piece, you're not going to get strong foundationally. So I'm teaching you how to lift things, how to move things, how to move your body in space, and ultimately how to get really strong and feel like a badass.
And you teach them via videos? Like, what does it look like? I mean, like on the app, how does it work?
Yeah, so you'd go to whichever program you're doing and you would click on like week 1, day 1, and it pulls up videos where I teach you every single move, how to breathe, how to engage your core. And then some of them are follow along all the way, and some of them are more like, I'm going to coach you, and then you're going to do it at your own pace. There's a blend of both intentionally, because when the workout is for time, we can do it together because you don't have to rush yourself. But if it's for reps, the way I do 10 reps might be different pace than what you do 10 reps in. So there really is a blend of both of those styles.
Does it talk at all about nutrition?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have. So I also am certified as a nutrition coach, and so I'm not just pulling it out my butt. I like to say I'm like a lot of people, and I have people who contribute recipes, but we've got, I think, 160 plus recipes. And then I teach intuitive eating. I'm a big believer in not counting calories or tracking macros. I'm going to teach you how to feed yourself with love and respect. And like you said, strong foods. We're going to eat some strong foods and also have some of those sometimes foods that we just enjoy. So my job is to help get you into that mindset. And it really goes hand in hand, right? When we're trying to get strong and heal, we've got to fuel ourselves. There's also a entire pelvic health tip. I brought in a ton of pelvic floor physical therapists, doctors, obstetricians, birth workers to give pelvic floor health tips. So exactly like your one patient who was struggling with back pain, getting a kid out of the crib. We've got tips for how to move better in life, day to day. We've got tips on how to deal with constipation or hemorrhoids and all those things, all those fun things that come with motherhood.
It's really so fabulous on a day-to-day when you think about it. And what is the best way if people had a specific question, like, do you incorporate this into your program? Someone with back pain, there's so many ways to reach people now. Do you like it to be through the app? Should people email you, write you on Instagram? I'm really not good with the options that are out there. This is all special.
Yeah. So probably if you've got questions, there's a couple options. You can message support@getmomstrong.com and we can answer questions there. Or you can certainly send a direct message on Instagram, and we pay pretty close attention. Not perfect, but pretty close attention on there.
And tell me what's next for you. So you have your regular Instagram account that, I know you post pretty much every day, right? And then you have the app, which sounds like a monster undertaking given how many people you've pulled in to do it. Where do you want to go from here?
So we're releasing something super exciting, and this is specifically for one of two moms. So either the mom who kind of has her own program, she likes to run, do CrossFit, F45, but she knows her core and pelvic floor needs some love, or the mom that's just really, really busy and doesn't know where to start. So it's a 10-minute or less core only program. So it's coming out at the end of this year, 2023, and I think it's going to be just wonderful. very minimal equipment. You can even do it with no equipment, and really designed to help women wherever they're at, whether they're beginner, intermediate, or advanced. That's our next big app project that's coming out real soon. We're very excited for that. I think it is very needed for all women. So even if you only have a few minutes, 5 minutes, give me 5 minutes and you'll see a difference.
That's amazing. So that's all I wanted to talk about. Is there anything else, any parting word? Thank you, first of all, so much for coming on. This was so interesting. I'm not a super fitness person, and this was still like fascinating to me to hear like what a difference it can make. So thank you so much. I think it's going to mean so much to our viewers in terms of how to be healthy and feel good about themselves and in their body. Any parting words you have for us, Ashley?
No, I'm just so appreciative that you had me. And I just want moms out there to know that if you're not feeling like yourself, it can and will get better. I think we're often in this circle of hopelessness and just treading water, if you will. And my job is to help you swim. So you can swim again, I promise.
I love it. Thank you so much. It's so hopeful. It gives me hope I can get stronger. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
Thank you to all of our viewers. That was great. And I think that, I want to reiterate what I think Ashley is saying, which is we can take care of ourselves as parents and specifically as moms. And it's okay to take some time to do that. And I love that message. I am super inspired to do my 10-minute course. So I'm waiting for that to come out at the end of the year. Thank you all for tuning in. Please, if you have time, check out some of the other podcasts, and we'll wait to see you next time. Bye.